I'm going to rephrase a very simple saying and put it in a way that is going to change forever the way you approach your own creation of your reality, your manifestation, whatever you want to call it. Anything that feels like it's a little out of your reach or maybe really out of your reach, this is going to reshape everything for you. Now, a lot of you may look around your reality and some of the things are going well, but there's probably a couple of things that you're like, why can't I get this thing right? Why is it that whenever I try to manifest this, maybe it might just start to show up, but then it all disintegrates? Okay. This common phrase that I know so many of you have heard, and it can feel really kind of a little like overdone, is the phrase, where your focus goes, energy flows, right? So many of us know that phrase, but let's face it, it almost sounds too rhymey and too easy that you almost bypass the reality of what that message is trying to say to you. And so I want you to think of it in this term, okay? We're going to rephrase this because this is going to hit you hard. This is going to hit you in your gut. It hit me in my gut when I first heard it. And I'm like, oh, that makes everything different for me. And it is, where your focus goes, that is what is available to you. Let's say that one more time. Where your focus goes is what is available to you. So, I mean, let's just focus on, for instance, maybe it's your purpose. You don't know what your purpose is. All you focus on is that you don't know what your purpose is. So, what becomes available to you? Confusion, lack of clarity, not knowing what your purpose is, right? If you are maybe wanting to, maybe you want more money for whatever reasons, okay? If you're always focused on your bills, if you're focused on your debt, if you're focused on how you only have enough to like maybe get by, guess what is available to you? This is like when you understand it from the place of this is what is available to you, that means this is what you're choosing to choose from. This is what you've created as your choices now in your reality because you're continuously focusing on the things that are obviously the opposite. Now, this, what we're talking about isn't necessarily groundbreaking. I would bet that 99% of you understand this concept. But when you understand what you're actually making available to you, it really starts to change the temp on everything, right? Because one, it really drives home the fact that this is what you are making available to you. It makes you the driver, right? Which we all know we are the creator of our own realities, but it drives it home a little bit more. And let me know in the comments if you're really understanding this, if it hits you a little differently. Okay, so let's explain from a quantum physics perspective how this works and why, right? Because we know that in quantum physics, like the act of observation itself is what affects a system. So a system will be affected simply by the observation. If I'm not observing something, it doesn't exist technically, right? So quantum physics also suggests that particles are constantly in potential states, awaiting your observation to collapse it into a very specific outcome. So before a particle is even observed, right? It exists in a very infinite state of potentials. Anything is possible until you observe that particle and you start to project your own focus thoughts, energies, emotion onto that particle. Okay, so if each particle holds an infinite potential, what collapses it is your focus, right? And that collapses it into a tangible experience, something within this physical reality. So when you, the observer, make a choice, choosing what is available to you, this absolutely will collapse the potential into that outcome. The quantum field is very fluid, okay? It's not fixed. And so there are a myriad of potential outcomes here for you. So therefore, whatever you focus on, which again, remember, without your observation, it doesn't exist. So if what is currently happening in your reality, you've got to stop observing it, because the more you observe it, the more available it is to you in your reality, right? So I'm going to give you another example of, I'm just going to give you two examples because I was talking to a girlfriend today, and she was like thinking of one of her dreams, this thing that she's always wanted her whole life, but she made certain choices in her life that caused her to go down a different path. And it's not to say that that wasn't a path that was very valid for her. I think it very much was. Timing can be a very important part of our creation process here. But one of her dreams was to have a ranch, right? And she's had a lot of difficulty getting any lack of clarity on how to make one of her dreams come true. And what she did was, when she focused on a very simple pleasure of sitting on the porch of her ranch and looking out at the land. I don't know, maybe she was like, I don't know what she was doing. Maybe she's drinking a coffee, but I know she doesn't drink coffee. So maybe it was something else like a chai. But whatever it may be, it was a simple pleasure that is very easy for her to conjure up in her mind, because sitting on a porch is a very tangible thing for anyone to really think about as putting yourself in that reality. But then what she did was she weaved it into her dream. She took something that was very simple, something she's experienced probably several, multiple times in her life that has brought her pleasure. The pleasure principle is so important when it comes to your reality creation. This is why, like, when I've done a couple of courses and in my retreat, this is what we focus on. We focus a lot on the pleasure, because you can create from healing for sure. And that's a very valid and important part. But once you kind of get through the healing phase, you start to realize that you can create from pleasure even better. So what she did was she focused and took something very tangible that she knew, that she recognized, that she could anchor into, and wove it into her dream. And as a result, all of these ideas and clarity and things started coming to her, of all the ways of her to manifest this dream into this reality, which she had been struggling for a very long time to achieve. So again, I'll give you another example before I go into why this is happening, why this is so important for you guys to do in your day-to-day, especially if your current reality kind of sucks, or maybe it really fucking sucks. Okay. So for instance, me, I've used this example several times, but I'm going to point out a couple other things that are important. When I was 26, about to turn 27, I really wanted to have my own place, and I knew that I wanted to buy a condo downtown Toronto. The problem was, is that I had no money saved up. I was $30,000 in debt, and my tax returns, because I was self-employed, only showed that I was making $13,000 a year. So I had a lot of factors that were blocking my pathway to that dream coming true. Because if my tax returns, even if I had the money, okay, to put a down payment, and maybe I didn't have debt, okay, if I'm only showing that amount on my tax returns, it's kind of hard to get a mortgage. It's really hard to get a mortgage. So I had a lot of things that were saying no freaking way, not even possible. So what did I do? Right? I would, as I've told you guys several times, I imagine myself in my dream loft. In fact, it wasn't even a condo that I really wanted. It was a loft. I mean, I would have totally been okay with a condo, which I was because that's what I ended up moving into. But I'm like, let me just go to what really excites me. And what really excites me is like an open space, high ceiling loft with exposed brick and really big windows, right? And it was a two level. The bedroom was up these stairs and it was overlooking the loft. And this was just like kind of like my dream vision. And so, one of the simple pleasures, and I had several, but I'll give you a couple of them. One was I loved sitting, I was currently living with my parents because I was trying to save money. And I would sit by the window in my dream loft that seemed very unreachable to me, but anchored it with a very simple pleasure of sitting by the big window and looking out at the street lamp and watching the snow fall during a snowstorm. That is one of my simple pleasures that I enjoy so much. It's very meditative to me. I don't know what it is about that, but I love that. And I would imagine myself, I would superimpose myself into that dream, doing something that is very real, something I've always done, and it has a lot of emotions attached to it because I've done it several times and it's a big, simple pleasure. I would imagine myself cooking in my kitchen and making meals that I loved and imagining the smells of it, very easy for me to do. Another thing that I did was I would imagine myself lying on the sofa, candles lit, reading a book and having soft, like, I don't know, music playing in the background, and just how nice it would be to just have my own space that I could relax in and read a book in my own privacy with nothing to bother me. Doing simple pleasures in what feels like an intangible reality to you is what helps to anchor it in. So, why? Why does this help you when it comes to now you know that where your focus goes is what is available to you, right? Which means you've got to stop focusing on all the things you don't want, right? We know that. It's very simple, but I don't know, this hits a little different, okay? You start focusing on all the things that you want. The problem is when you start to do that is that sometimes it doesn't feel very real, especially if it's an experience you don't have any experience with. I had no experience with buying my first home. I had no experience with living in my own space yet. I'd always had roommates. And so what happened was I created a bridge, okay, between what I already knew and the new reality that I desired. Okay, because what I did was I essentially chose a reality from the vast quantum field of infinite potentials. I took a particle and I superimposed it and collapsed it into waveform with a specific energetic imprint that I already knew. So, quantum physics it suggests, right, that the field responds very well to familiar energy patterns, right? This is why it's so hard sometimes. Like, for instance, I would love to have $1 million business. That means if I'm going to have $1 million business, I'm going to have to be making like $80,000 to $90,000 a month. That seems really far-fetched for me. I've never had an $80,000 to $90,000 a month, but I know I want to have $1 million business. That's one of my goals. At least in the interim of goals I see for myself. And so in order to make that happen, I've got to choose something that is part of that reality that I know is a simple pleasure of mine to anchor it in. Because otherwise it's like, I can't even conceive it. Like you have no emotion to attach to it, right? The energy patterns are very unfamiliar. In fact, they might even start to draw up fear in some way. So By creating these familiar energy patterns, you create a stronger vibrational match between what is familiar and what is possible, meaning AKA haven't experienced yet. So, this process, like I said, anchors the potential reality in the quantum field, drawing it into your experience by grounding it through sensory reality, right? You know, you need all your senses to be like on 100, right? To specially collapse something really fast. This is one of the reasons, again, why when you do, for instance, a plant medicine journey, all of your senses are so heightened. Any of you who've done one know your hearing feels like you've got the hearing of a dog or more. Okay. There have been times where, like, if I was wearing like this necklace, I was wearing something, my blue one that I have that everyone comments on. I remember wearing that. It felt like it was weighing 20 pounds on my chest. It's nowhere close to that, but it felt like that. So you're just feeling so much more. And because you're feeling so much more when you have these high visuals that are so vivid, another important part of manifestation is that now you're feeling the sensory, right? You've got the hearing, your sense of smell is super strong too. You can smell things like at a different level than you've ever known. Vividly, you're seeing colors in ways you've never seen colors before. And all of this is happening while your brain is like, "Ooh, well, this is familiar. I remember this, whatever." But even though this is new, I can anchor in new pathways. And now we start anchoring in these new pathways with like a beautifully more orchestrated reality, which is now setting the tone for you actually manifesting it so much faster. The other thing that happens is synchronicity plus quantum entanglement equal opportunities that present themselves in ways that align to your focus, even when your current situation doesn't look like it could support it. So let's go back to my example. I wanted a condo. I was 30 grand in debt. I had no money saved up, and I had tax returns that only showed $13,000 a year, okay, in what I made because I was able to write so much stuff off. Well, this is what I would do. I would, even though I didn't have the money yet, some people think they need to wait for the money. No, you need to show up in the reality before things come to you. So I would go not just to different condos that had open houses or they were new builds that you could go in and look at the different like floor plans and the different textures like tiles and carpets or paint colors or whatever it was that you wanted. I would go in and I would get a coffee. I would get a mocha specifically because I was really into mochas back then. And I would go in because it was the enjoyment of me holding that coffee. And I would go in and I would start putting myself in that reality and start feeling the energy of it. By doing that, I'm creating momentum. I'm creating a vibrational match between my current reality and what I love and a future reality that I want. I would also go to furniture stores and I would just, again, I would buy a coffee. It was a pleasure thing. It was me like, I'm just going to go in and observe collapsing potentials. I would look at things that weren't currently in my reality that I wanted to be in my reality. And I would obviously sit on the sofas. I would imagine like, ooh, I would love this. I wouldn't care about the price tag. And I would just go in and do that. Right. Of course, also, I would buy magazines and I would flip through House and Home and I would just immerse myself into the picture and just be like, ooh, like I could design it this way and I could design it that way and I could choose that color palette and this lampshade and whatever. I would do it all. And so the whole timing of when I started that was 5 months to when I actually like bought the condo. Okay. But from the moment I really started going into the condo and looking at condos and furniture and stuff like that, within about a couple of weeks, all of a sudden, all of this money started coming towards me through my job. Like I just got so busy and I had set up a system that would allow me to manage my money very well. And within 6 weeks, I had half the down payment for my condo. Okay. So I was like, whoa, like I'd never been able to not just make that much money, but save that much money. Okay. In a month. Not only did I have that happen, but because I didn't have it all, I went to my dad and I asked him, I go, Dad, would you loan me the other half? I've found a condo I really like and I really want it. And I said, I will pay you. My dad's like very like we don't give out loans to family members. He's had horrible experiences with people from his past in his family, where he's always got the short end of the stick. So I knew I had to go in there with a very specific plan. I said, Dad, this is the payment plan. It was under 6 months. I would pay him back. And I said, this is what I'm going to do. And he's like, are you sure you can stick to that? I said, I'm positive. I think I might even be able to pay you back sooner. And I did. I paid him back a little bit sooner. And so now I had my full down payment. The problem is that not only was I $30,000 in debt, I had a tax return that didn't allow for a mortgage approval to really be in my sights. Well, one of my best clients at the time was my accountant, and we had a great relationship. And he said, I told him, like, he goes, like, you know what, Nicole, I work right next to a bank. Let me talk to one of the lenders, and I'm gonna see what I can do for you. Sure enough, he's like, Nicole calls me up. Yeah, they want you to come in. You're gonna be approved. They looked at all the numbers. Sent them all your numbers. He's my accountant, and he's like, no problem. They're ready to sign. And I was like, amazing. So what happened? I went in, put my down payment, signed on the dotted line, and now I was, waiting just for the build out to happen. Well, here's an interesting trick, and this is what happened just towards the end. So I got exactly what I needed to get the ball rolling. But when it came to closing and I was getting ready to move in, the bank messaged me and said, there's a problem. We can't approve your mortgage unless we have a letter from your employer that you're making at least $70,000 a year. Okay. And I'm like, okay, but I'm not employed. I'm a subcontractor, right? Like I don't have an employer. Like I did, but I was subcontracted in, right? And of course, it's all by commission. So there's no guarantee of anything. And I was like, oh my God, why is this happening to me? Like I was so close to having this condo. And so I went in, I knew the owners. Here's the other thing. Don't underestimate the life choices you've made, even if they seem out of alignment with how you've lived your life. I used to bartend. I used to bartend at one of the biggest clubs in Toronto. And I knew a lot of like the promoters and all of that. Well, one of the owners of my spa that I worked at was a promoter. And he had built like a whole new business and was opening up restaurants and nightclubs and now spas. And then his business partner also lived, funny enough, he also bought a unit in the condo building I was moving into. He bought one of the penthouses. So I went in and I said, hey, like I'm getting, I need to move in, but I can't like close and move in until I have a letter, whatever says. And so I don't know if that's something you can do. And one of the owners the guy who actually was in the building, he bought in the building that I did. He's like, what do you need us to say? And I was like, 70 grand? No problem. We'll write it for you. And I was like, oh, okay. And so it all worked out. And these are the things that happen. These synchronicities, then when they match with the quantum entanglement of how you're observing the part, like I kept my focus on what it was that I saw myself living. Okay. But it had to be attached to something I already was familiar with. And then all these opportunities just kind of came in that honestly, if you looked at everything on paper, there's no freaking way I was able to buy that condo. There's no freaking way. But it all happened. And so what I want you guys to think about is when it comes to creating the reality that you want, whatever that is, first and foremost, remind yourself what I focus on is what is available to me. This it puts all the onus on you. You are responsible. And that's really important because if you bring in any victim energy into your kind of creation process, already you're not collapsing the timeline that you want. Okay, you're collapsing victim timeline. So don't be going in not taking responsibility for your reality, okay? Take responsibility for where you're at, but also be take responsibility for the fact that, you know what? I can choose differently. I just got to like switch my observation and then start weaving in, which is something I talked about in my womb of activation course, okay, is weaving in the experiences that are familiar to you and are tied to pleasure. Weave them into that dream reality and keep envisioning it. And then do things that also, I mean, this reality loves when you start interacting with it also. So interact with your reality in a way that is also pulling in what it is that you want. And I promise you, you'll start collapsing those particles of potential into the timeline, into a wave of timeline that you really want. Because it's what it's called is like, it's called superposition, like superimposition, right? Is it superimposition or superpositioning? I think it's called superpositioning, right? So when you like are superimposing something or putting it in a specific position, that is like you weaving in your familiar reality, your familiar experiences to a particle of potential that you may feel is out of your reach, but now it's not so far out of reach. All right. So, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know in the comments, like if this has been helpful for you, if this kind of like sometimes, and this is what I found, especially with those of you in your healing journey. And this is why like I love working with you guys when you come to the retreats or you work with me one-on-one. It's like you're already doing really good stuff. You just need a little tweak. Okay? You don't need to change the whole like thing. You just need to tweak a few things. And when you don't know what it is that you need to tweak, it can feel like the whole damn thing is a big mess. And maybe it's just like you're doing it wrong. No, there's just a few simple tweaks that can take your like your current journey to from here to up here, like instantly. That's why it's so easy to quantum jump, right? You quantum jump when you make one, two simple tweaks. So I'm hoping that this will provide you some of those simple tweaks, right? And of course, when it comes to the dream timeline that you want, I have a course. It's a mini offer. It's super cheap. It's only $18, the future self formula. Okay. And that future self formula is designed. I use concepts like sound. Okay. Why do I use concepts like sound? Because sound is like, look, North Node is in Pisces right now. Sound is going to be one of the biggest things you're going to hear talked about, okay, going forward into the future. Is sound healing, sound when it comes to creating a reality. This is why when you come to my retreat, my playlist is so freaking good. Everyone who comes is like, what's that playlist? I'm like, well, you have access to it. I give them the playlist. Why? Because they can tap into the medicine frequency that they experienced in their journey just by listening to sound. And I use that in my future self formula and I teach you a couple little tricks that are like reshaping your mind to think about things a little differently. Okay. And so like sound is really important. So when you can incorporate sound into your reality process, things start to ramp up really fast. So I'm going to leave the link for that below. And of course, if you want to like change your reality really quickly, I highly suggest you book a ticket to my 3-day 180 retreat, May 15th. I'm hosting it with Consuelo. I can't wait. I'm going to be talking to her tomorrow or no, on Friday. And her and I'm going to be chatting more about that and what we're going to be doing. And that retreat, every retreat just gets more and more powerful. And oh, working with Consuelo is going to be so fun for me. And I know that it's going to be super fun for a lot of you. I know you guys love her. So, that tickets for that are down below. Again, you don't need to have all of your money up front. I have payment plans available to you. Payment doesn't have to be fully completed until the beginning of May. So there's a little bit of buffer room there for some of you who need that. What else? Oh, tomorrow I'm going to be doing all signs. So that's already been timed out. You can see it on my YouTube if you've already been subscribed. And of course, guys, if you want to just say thanks, help me out on my channel, please like this video, drop a comment below. It helps me. It helps other people maybe find my material that may be in need of it. And it's just one of the easiest and for me, fun ways for you guys to engage my work. I love you guys. Have an amazing day, and I'll talk to you soon.